token no fungible. La nueva tormenta de cifrado. Hernán Bobrovsky, Phoebus Abogados, Argentina. Natter, Haug Partners, LLP, Estados Unidos. Moderador, Pablo Armando, Noetinger Armando Abogados, Argentina.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the last panel of this CP seminar that challenges us to discuss a novel topic. Before getting together and discussing this with Hernán and Ben, I want to thank CP for the opportunity and for the invitation to participate in this panel and for being in charge of bringing a bit of the crypto world to the IP industry. So we're going to talk about what non-fungible tokens are, how they work, and what are the economic benefits of using them. From my perspective, I can tell you that the non-fungible tokens, or NFTs, combine a series of aspects combined with copyright, cryptocurrency, and blockchain technologies. So now we invite you to see a brief video that perfectly summarizes what NFTs are.
Digital, like drawings, music, tweets. The owners of these digital items have been selling them. For instance, someone bought this digital drawing of a cat. Okay, are y'all sitting down? Yes, you're all sitting down. It sold for $172,000. Think of it like this. It's like art. Anyone can own a print of a painting, but only one person can own the original. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take a selfie, and I'm going to NFT it. I don't know if that's how you say it, but so. All right. So, but here's what I'm going to do, because the cat seemed to be very popular. So I drew a picture of a cat here. All right. So I'm going to tweet out the information on how you can buy this NFT, and all the money will go to Jose Andres' charity, World Central Kitchen. All right.
So with a bit of humor, we can present this topic, but now our panelists will tell us more about whether this is so and whether those are the correct terms to refer to NFTs. So going back to the panel and going back to being a bit more serious, to discuss this topic, we decided to have a format of Q&A so we can make the most out of our speakers today. So first, I want to present them. On the one hand, we have Ben Natter. He is a partner of the Haug Partners firm that has offices in New York. He is a lawyer and has a JD in intellectual property and intellectual law. He is a member of SCP, Marx, and many other organizations. His activities are centered in global strategies in trademarks, procurement, management, and enforcement, but also on the transaction, mergers, and acquisitions that have to do with intellectual property. On the other hand, Hernán Bobrovsky, a member of Phoebus Abogados, is a lawyer from the Law School of the National University of Rosario and an intellectual, industrial, and market law specialist. He is a professor in Fresco in the Santa Fe Catholic University. He works with entrepreneurs, and he is the vice president of the Industrial, Computer, and Technology Law of the Rosario Bar Association Institute. And they will tell us about this very interesting topic. So let's start moving into the Q&A and seeing what you have to tell us. Hernán, if you could get started and let us know very briefly how you would describe NFTs and how they work. Okay, sure. First of all, I want to thank SCP for inviting me here today. I want to thank Matias, Noetinger, Maximo, who also gave my name out so I could be part of this panel. Thank you, Pablo, and thank you, Ben. It is an honor to have been in touch with you in this past few days and to share this panel with you. And this panel talks about quite a novelty, not because this is a recent topic, although the boom started a few months ago with quite interesting pieces of news that we will most likely be discussing today, but because even if the technology dates back to 2017, there has been a resounding case, which is the case of Beeple, who is a digital artist who sold a collage of all of his work that was sold for $69 million in an auction. And that made NFTs become part of the public agenda, and it made for people to start paying attention to non-fungible tokens or NFTs. But first of all, in order for us to understand what an NFT is, we should understand what a token is. A token is a representation of a digital asset. It is like a card, a coin, if you will, that allows us to represent an asset. We are normally used to owning physical things, material things, and we're used to possessing them. But here we need to think differently. And perhaps for us as professionals who work with intellectual property rights can distinguish things and material objects that contain the intellectual property rights with which we work every single day. But in this case, the particular characteristic of this token that, of course, runs over blockchain. And of course, we need to explain what a blockchain is. A blockchain is a technology that allows for us, through a decentralized distributed database, to validate operations, run code, store data and documents, so that we have unchangeable transactions that settle chronologically through time and cannot be modified without modifying the entirety of the chain. So based on cryptography, this cryptographic hash that is non-changeable is created. But the question is, what makes non-fungible tokens be different from those that are fungible, such as Bitcoin or other crypto assets that can be interchangeable? So the concept of being fungible stems from the fact that one asset can be used for another asset without altering its quality. So if we have 1 peso or $1, it is the same as another peso or another dollar. So it's the same if I get one bill or the other, or if I own 1 Bitcoin, and hopefully the price of Bitcoin continues on the rise. Let's see what happens at the end of the day. But as I was saying, if I own 1 Bitcoin or I own another Bitcoin, it's the same to me in terms of the nature of those Bitcoins. But with non-fungible tokens, we're talking about unique assets. They are unique in terms of their creation. And that is what makes them be so particular or so interesting if we're thinking about this boom that we are seeing with crypto art or digital art. Because we're thinking about a piece of art, for example, we're talking about a painting by Picasso, and we can digitally represent that through a non-fungible token that is unique, that normally runs over one specific blockchain, which is the Ethereum network, and over a standard that has the ERC 721 protocol or ERC 1155 that allow for storing additional information. We're not just storing information about the transaction, we're also storing the name, the symbol, the total amount of that information. And we can also set who the owner is. So there is a distinction between the creator and the owner, and we can actually draw the line of ownership of that particular digital asset. We can also create conditions for the transfer, authorization rules as well. We will see a typical case of the right to resell the non-fungible token because, for example, in the Argentinian system, we cannot resell any particular piece of art and then get royalties, and the platform for non-fungible tokens would allow us to do that.
And we can also have access to metadata, that is that information that is in the digital file, and allows us, for instance, to relate that token to a specific work of art. That is why it's so important with copyright. And Pablo, what I need to tell you, and that is the most important thing for you to take away from this presentation, that the token is not the work. When we're talking about copyright, the token is not the work. The token may represent the work. So if you own the token, it's like being the owner of an original painting, or own for instance, a literary work. I can transmit that, but I do not have the copyright that, of course, go to the author of the work, unless he or she has transferred that. So in order to create a token, I need a digital wallet. That wallet needs to be related, connected to a specific platform. The well-known wallets are MetaMask or Trask. And the most popular platforms are OpenSea, Rarible, Avalanche. There are several of these that can allow you to generate markets, so you can create these tokens from these wallets, store them, and after that, sell them. So digital native, that is on sale, that allows you to create a price, to go on an auction, and then to generate traceability about that chain of transmission. Thank you very much, Hernán. Now we have a little bit of idea about all this NFT world. So a question to Ben, and Ben is going to be speaking in English. So I will be asking him questions in English.
NFT is nowadays a hot topic because some works of art have been tokenized and sold for very significant amounts of money. Can you share with the floor some information of these cases?
Sure. So first off, thanks to CP for having me, Hernán and Pablo for participating in the panel. Since almost every day it's in the news now that an NFT is selling for some record-breaking amount. Today in the paper this morning, Charlie Bit My Finger, which is a very well-known YouTube video. Apparently, I'd never seen it before. That sold. The original video sold for $700,000. Just the other day, Disaster Girl, which is a well-known meme of a girl smiling in front of a house burning down, sold for $500,000. Before that, the most well-known cases were a video of LeBron James. It's actually sold in conjunction with an NBA marketplace. So this sold for $200,000. There's a very well-known digital artist named Beeple. He sold a print for $69 million. It's an NFT print. That's the highest sale to date. The first tweet ever, which was by Jack Dorsey, who's the founder of Twitter, sold for $2.9 million. And as I think Ellen DeGeneres mentioned, a cat meme sold for $600,000. The list kind of goes on and on. Those are the, if you were to type into Google today, these are the top results, but it's been in the news almost every single day.
That's great. Thanks, Ben. And in the US, certainly some industries are analyzing how the use of these NFTs can benefit their businesses. If we have to pick two particular industries, such as the ones related to sports and celebrities, for example, could you share with us how are these companies reacting to this new technology? Where and how they are targeting this technology?
Sure. So in the U.S., the name, image, and likeness rights, which are generally known as NIL rights, they're not really codified on a uniform level. The most advanced statutes are in California and New York. They are covered under right of publicity statutes. So this is long been a point of contention for celebrities because they really don't have a great way to derive income from their likeness. It's quite complicated. So athletes have been arguing that perhaps selling an NFT can fall outside the scope of whatever agreements they have with the professional sports leagues. The instance I mentioned earlier of LeBron James, that was done in conjunction with the NBA, but a number of NFL players have sold their own NFTs, and an NHL player has as well, a player from the PGA Tour. So that's generally what's going on. I would imagine that in the next collective bargaining agreements, this will be covered. Also, since we wrote an article and had to do something for a client in April, since that time, the NHL, I saw, has some type of an arrangement with Topps trading cards, and now they're offering NFTs. And the NHL and the NFL were both in some type of a partnership to sell NFTs, which is new. So it's something that's developing every day. That's for athletes. With respect to celebrities, it's always been an issue in U.S. copyright law that and also in Europe, that they don't like parties taking advantage of their likeness for profit. So celebrities are using this to try to reclaim ownership of their likeness, quoting what's in the news. I'm not sure how effective that. It's probably more of a way to make them feel good about themselves. I'm not sure that it really accomplishes that much. There's copyright issues involved, and the copyright is not necessarily transferred with the NFT. So an NFT can be sold without transferring ownership of the image, and that's kind of an issue. There's a model, Emily Ratajkowski, I think I'm butchering her name, but she just sold an image, and it's not clear that she even owns the copyright to it. She sold an NFT, and it's not clear that she was even entitled to be. There was an Instagram post, there was a Sports Illustrated image, and it's not clear that she had the rights to it. I anticipate we'll be seeing more and more of that. Some of the athletes are not that sophisticated, and they're, people advising them may not have a complete understanding of how to navigate U.S. copyright law. So that's kind of a quick, not so quick summary.
Yeah, that's great. And well, we are seeing that there are new cases and news every day. And I think that at the very beginning, it was just a start with one piece of art, and that was limited to that. And nowadays, everyone is trying to make profit with this. So you have to be very, very conscious about this and starting this NFT and the impact that will have. I will ask something to Hernán now.
Hernán, do you know if in Argentina or in Latin America, are there any artists or companies that are considering the possibility or using NFTs right now? Yeah, of course, there are. As Ben was telling us, that there are many, many cases that we see every day on the news. Nobody wants to be out of NFTs. FOMO, fear of missing out. Nobody wants to be left out of this fashion. So everybody wants to do something with NFTs. In Argentina, for instance, the last piece of news was an agreement signed between the Argentine Football Association, that of course owns the rights for the image of the national football team. Among them, of course, the best football player in the world, Lionel Messi, with all the implications. and they reached an agreement with the platform socios.com to create NFTs, tokens representing assets, images, football matches by the national football team. We know that there is an initial, there are going to be thousands of tokens. It's going to be $2 each. And of course, they can be resold. And that is important to mention. So there are many works that have been resold for 100 times their original price. And that is the interesting thing about this. So these assets are going to be supported by a cryptocurrency, Chiles. And this was announced on May the 13th. And we have seen a boom of all this. The agreement will last 3 months, and they are issuing 20 million tokens in this period. So if you think of it, all the additional income that this may represent for an organization as the AFA, the Argentine Football Association, being able to issue these tokens, and you need to add that to all the income generated through advertising, television. So now they are going to be able to monetize all these digital assets. And something that is very interesting at regional level, I'm part of a Telegram group. And this group was created by a Colombian artist. She's a crypto artist. Fida is her name, her nickname, in fact, and her Instagram account is @soyfida. And she's the creator of this group that has more than 300 artists and people related to NFTs. And there we are sharing the know-how on how to create NFTs, and we encourage more artists to include their art in NFTs so that they can sell them. They can be done individually or in groups. We can have auctions. We're sharing all this information to make it easier for people. I have explored the platform after interacting with this community, being able to access, and it's pretty straightforward. Just some clicks. If you have cryptocurrency, of course, then you need Ether. That is the virtual currency that you can use in Ethereum in order to issuing them. Of course, you have some transactional cost to pay. That is called CAS. That is what you are charged in the transactions over the platform. But once you have the currency and once you have a wallet, you can start operating in the platform, and it's very straightforward to create an NFT. That's why more and more artists from Latin America, sports people, celebrities, as Ben mentioned, are doing it. We'll see what happens in the future. It's a very good way of having some additional income. So this is a non-traditional way of doing it, but we need to see what happens in the future. So now as long as we have people willing to pay for them, of course, we're going to have more and more of them. Now, I imagine that these tokens, I know that you mentioned football players, or that Ben mentioned hockey players or American football players. Maybe this then became the trading cards that we had when we were kids. So if you want to take that to the analog world, those look like trading cards. It's a work that is on a special support. Well, trading cards were a lot, but in this case, it can be unique or a limited edition. And this can be the way in which young people have access to this crypto world.
Yes, without a shadow of a doubt. I agree with that. And we'll see what Ben has to say about that as well. But I think undoubtedly the market of collectibles is probably one of the case uses for this technology, such as it happens with digital art or crypto art. This has also been used with digital gaming. So if I have a very particular scheme or a gun that has a value in it within a game, owning that digital asset in a particular platform and then being able to transfer that asset can imply a monetization, not just for the creator of the video game in relation to players, but also a monetization between one player to another. And that is a leap in quality because it creates an industry, a marketplace within the market for the game, for the exchange of digital assets. And going back to what you were saying about trading cards, we're talking about things that are valuable because they are scarce. As any good within the market, if there is scarcity, then the price always goes up. So when we're talking about collectible trading cards, the scarcity was generated on purpose by the person who created that trading card album. We all knew it was a hard card to get. It might not even coincide with the best player if we were talking about a trading card album for a soccer team. But there was like this limited edition that made something more scarce. And we can do the same with NFTs. You can create one copy of something, or you can issue a limited amount of copies. And we will talk about that typical scarcity that is characteristic of cryptocurrency. Because in the case of cryptocurrency, we know that there's a scarcity, so that at the end of the way, all the Bitcoin fans will believe that the value of the assets will grow because of that scarcity. So I think that this is a good example of the technology being used.
I think we were just discussing about from a collective perspective. I mean that the tokens or the NFT may be or may replace the old stickers and things that children used to collect when they were very young.
Sure. So actually, I think I mentioned it before, but Topps Trading Cards, which is the baseball card company, and Panini, I saw both had partnerships with respective, I think with multiple sports leagues for trading cards and stickers. The Panini stickers were not that popular when I was young. I think they're quite popular here now, at least in the United States. And it looks like the NBA is essentially created their own platform for trading digital trading cards and NFTs, which is Top Shot. I think it very well might replace our baseball cards. I used to collect hockey cards and baseball cards. I also think that unlike blockchain, because of the collectible nature, unlike cryptocurrency, because of the collectible nature of an NFT, in theory, I was reading some articles, it's possible that it could end up being more of a stable marketplace than some type of a cryptocurrency, which is not regulated. So Hernán, I got that's what you were saying too. So
let's turn to an analysis from a legal perspective. Do you believe that IP laws have to be adapted or amended as a consequence of the NFTs? Or is the current framework elastic enough to grant protection to this new technology and business?
I think laws in the United States and most likely Europe may have to be adapted, but it's not necessarily intellectual property laws. So the boom of NFTs has apparently prompted statewide legislation in a number of states with respect to name, image, likeness rights, right of publicity. And traditionally, those are statutes that they lag behind in most states. So if someone in the entertainment field could have sufficient protection for their rights in New York and go to Ohio and have no protection for their, I'm just using that as an example, but I'm not quite sure what their statute is, but they'd have no protection for their name, image, and likeness rights. I think that the growth of NFTs could prompt federal legislation with respect to right of publicity, name, image, likeness rights, which are essentially treated as the same thing in the United States. With respect to copyright law in the U.S., I don't really see it. Actually, from the experiences that people have been having with NFTs, they show that probably the current copyright framework should be sufficient. A main issue right now is piracy in marketplaces, which kind of falls squarely within the copyright statute. Whether or not on the federal level protection is needed for the owner of an NFT, so they would be able to perhaps pursue a parallel claim. There'd be a claim for copyright infringement and theft of an NFT, or counterfeiting an NFT is probably more accurate. I don't know if it's really necessary. There's probably another claim that it could fall under.
Okay, and do you believe that the fact that the tokenized work cannot determine or cannot show if the author of the work is the owner of that work, or is the person who tokenized the work who will be the owner? What do you believe that the courts eventually would say about this?
So who owns the copyright to the work, right? So I imagine it would most likely be brought as a breach of contract claim, and it's something that would have to be established under the contract. I think the issue is the ability of the owner of the NFT to pursue a claim for copyright infringement, which is if someone reposted a photo or video without authorization, you want to pursue a claim for copyright infringement, and whether or not they have the right to do so is the real question. I don't know that adjusting the copyright statute is the answer, but I'm sure we'll see a slew of cases in federal courts. Something that's interesting and somewhat related is there's litigation involving reposting Instagram photos, and whether or not Instagram grants a license to third parties to post those photos in news publications. And courts have gone both ways because it's a contractual issue. So whether or not the owner of who took the photo posted it to Instagram, whether or not that person is entitled to any relief. They've actually been looking at the Instagram user guidelines, and apparently it's not clear there. So those have been cases of fair use under US law. It's essentially a mess. So if the only way to describe a story is by using that photo, courts have permitted it, which there's no kind of exact formula for determining that. I have a feeling cases involving reposting the work containing an NFT will end up the same way. They'll start going both ways. Can also anticipate that the agreements selling the NFTs are probably not that great. So there's going to be, tremendous variation in the quality of the agreement. So.
Okay. And speaking of Instagram, as you just mentioned, we have one question from the audience that, in particular, regarding the tweet case you mentioned before. From your perspective, who is the owner of the tweet that was tokenized and sold by the CEO and founder of Twitter?
Well, so he sold it. He was as if he was the owner, right? But it's a screenshot of a tweet. So there's a copyright issue. The entity, which I think is Twitter Inc., or maybe I don't know what the entity name is, they would have rights there too. Given that he was the founder of Twitter, I'm sure he worked it out. But yeah, it's quite complicated. The same thing. A good example to show how how messy it is this YouTube video, which has been downloaded millions of times, and now someone owns the original video, and it was up on YouTube. I think they just had it taken down. They also, if I'm not mistaken, acquired the copyright though, which is how they were able to get it taken down.
Thanks, Ben. And Hernán, desde tu...
And Hernan, from your perspective, would you like to tell us about the laws in Argentina or about the laws in your region and whether or not you think they should be modified or somewhat adapted to now receive this new technology to provide a support for how these pieces of work are being traded? Well, with regard to copyright, I think we had come across sufficient issues with the digitalization of material. So I think we had enough with that. But then the the non-fungible tokens came up and made our lives even more complex. Having said that, I think that legislation is available because we do have IP laws in Latin America across the countries of the region, especially after TRIPS. I think we have a global standard for the protection of copyrights. So I think the issue has more to do with compliance and enforcement rather than an issue of there not being a proper framework for enforcement. So because now works of art are so easily copied, those who own that property cannot really enforce their rights. But now it appears that with these non-fungible tokens, these owners seem to be gaining more control in as much as it is themselves who can issue and monetize and somehow create a traceability in terms of seeing who are the successive owners of that token. But let us not forget what we mentioned at the beginning, because a token is not the work itself. The token is the representation of that piece of work through a digital asset. And that actually leads us sometimes to a link for a URL that leads us to a server where that piece of work is digitally lodged. So it is not the work itself that is there. And if that digital asset is lost, then the token loses all value. So at the legal level, we should understand that being the owner of a token does not mean that we are the owners of the intellectual property of the underlying piece of work. And of course, that leads to multiple questions and issues that Ben was mentioning a moment ago. Because do I have the right to reproduce this? Do I have the right to share this? Do I have the right to create derivative work based on this? Well, evidently I don't, unless I draft and enter into a contract that enables me to do that. So the whole contractual aspect becomes fundamental for this transaction, because it is through contracts we share our autonomy and our will to establish conditions to share and transfer these assets, and that contract will regulate the relationship primarily. Later on, we need to go to the framework, the legal framework that we have in our system that is in a way subsidiary to the will of the different parties of the contract. And then we need to think about the rights of third parties, such as the image rights for people that might also be portrayed in the work of art. We get the issue of children or people that are underage who need the authorization of parents, the authorization of people who show up in the image, because in many countries, such as in the case of Argentina, are being regulated in the civil code independently from any regulation in IP. We have cases of audiovisual works of art that also include audiovisual music rights as well. So all of this falls under the umbrella of the NFT and covers not only copyrights, but also image rights or the rights of third parties in general. So sometimes we can allow for someone to tokenize a work of art that is copyrighted, but perhaps we don't have the authorization, as Ben was mentioning with the case of Emily, for a third party to show up, or perhaps we're not the owner of the photograph that is on the screen. So we are looking at a phenomenon that is just starting, with legal issues that are going to be on the rise, and I think we need to be ready for that. And we're not talking about one law, one specific statute that will give us all the answers. We will have contractual issues, or plagiarism, or piracy issues, cases where people say that they are the owners of someone else's work. But
there's no more options. Basically, we need to be updated and ready to deal with this, and especially to be aware of all this phenomenon when it comes to writing contracts.
Porque ante la ausencia de un contrato,
Because if you don't have a contract, then enforcement is going to be even harder. Perfect. Okay, so this is one of the last questions. I will start with you, Hernán. Since you are a professor at university, 2 questions. What do you think about the impact of these on the IP practitioners? What's going to be the impacts on our practice? And whether you believe that, and related to new technologies that we see today, is this also going to create a new branch, a new area of law? Yeah, I think there's no doubt. I think we already, there are impacts already. As I told you before, creating an NFT, it's very, very easy. Just a couple of clicks. It's a tutorial on YouTube that takes 10 minutes. And after that, you will have your own digital assets. You don't need a lawyer for that. What is going to be required is people will ask us, they will need our services when people want to understand what they are doing with an NFT. Apart from that, getting on a platform, you need to accept and you need to agree to the terms and conditions of the platform in which I'm creating my NFT. So there are different topics that we have to pay attention to, where to claim if my token disappears, or if it doesn't show all the features that I want, if I'm not paid royalties. So in Argentina, there are no specific regulations about some areas, but platforms allow you to basically get royalties for the selling of the work. It's in fact a concept that was conceived for work of arts, for sculptures, paintings, but it allows you to do it with any kind of digital art. It can be a song, it can be anything. So of course there's a new sub-area there of law. I think that it's the challenge we are facing today, those of us who work in IP, is that we cannot ignore technology. Technology is everywhere in our everyday life, but it has to do it appears in currency, in the way we pay, entertainment, Netflix, video games, streaming. That's another revolution in copyright. But the challenge has to do with, we need to keep studying, being updated, understand how technology works and what are the limits, what are the programming logic. I always recommend my students that there are 2 things that they need to study. It's basically, one is English, even though China is making progress, but still they need to learn English and how to speak English, because English is still #1 language in the world. And the other area is they need to learn how to code. That's very important. There are universities in Argentina that are including coding as part of the law syllabus, because this will require some interdisciplinary work. Even though we are specialized in IP, we need to have a global vision of law. Nowadays, we also need to learn about economy, coding, also understand the way in which an artist thinks, because everything is interconnected. So I invite you all to work on interdiscipline and try to understand that language, something we're not used to understanding. By doing that, we're going to improve as practitioners. Thank you very much, Hernán.
Same question, Ben. What do you think IP lawyers and professionals have to study and consider NFTs regimes? Which is the impact of NFTs in the intellectual property field? Is there a new subspecialty coming on to young lawyers?
So I'm sure it'll be a new subspecialty, because there's always a new subspecialty. There's a crop of cryptocurrency attorneys now, cannabis attorneys in the US, just about every specialty you can, or I guess niche in maybe a type of law that might cross several practice areas. There'll be a specialty. There's probably, I did a quick Google search and I found a few attorneys already marketing themselves as NFT attorneys. Earlier, I think that, as I mentioned before, the name, image, and likeness rights and the right of publicity in the US really needs to be more developed. So those statutes would really impact celebrities selling images of themselves as NFTs, or images, videos. That needs to be more developed. And I think attorneys will have to figure out how to navigate copyright laws, existing copyright laws, or perhaps they'll be changed, or there'll be some new legislation passed with respect to copyright laws. I feel that a lot of the litigation surrounding NFTs will actually come under the as a breach of contract claim, and it remains to be seen what courts, how courts decide. For an instance, like we saw a few cases when we were doing a quick search of essentially piracy of the NFT, right? So someone doesn't have a right to be reproducing the work, and that's infringing the copyright, and perhaps there's some rights given to the owner of the NFT under the contract to purchase it. So those claims are kind of straightforward. It's finding the best route for pursuing those claims. I think that's what's going to happen.
Thank you, Ben. Gracias a todos.
Thank you very much to you too, Hernán and Ben. Very good and clear explanations. Now we have a better idea about this topic. We ran out of time, obviously. I had some questions about the impact of NFTs in the economy, and also the impact of regulation, or the need of the consumers to control, for instance, NFT and carbon production. You know, they're using blockchain that is a lot of energy. So, okay, we're going to save those questions for, I don't know, later. I think it was a very fruitful exchange. Just to close this session, I would like to thank you too. I also thank CP, and my final thought about this has to do with your answer to this last question. For me, NFTs and many of these examples of technology that we're finding today, in a way, help democratize art and business related to copyright, personal rights. Now the artists can tokenize their own work and then can sell their own work of art without anyone in the middle. they can get closer to the buyer, although counterfeiting is going to be an issue. I think that this also will help to have a better control of their own work. This will allow them to generate new income using smart contracts that will make it easier for them basically to set their own conditions. So I think that from my perspective, technology is generating new opportunities, and we as practitioners of intellectual property, we need to study it, to understand it, and then use it the same way we do with other areas of law. Other tools that have revolutionized other industries, like the CD-ROM and streaming, and also maybe NFTs don't go too far, you know? They just don't go too far, but technology, as Hernán mentioned, as Ben mentioned, technology is everywhere in our everyday life. So I think that we need to embrace technology, and we need to start working with technology from the very beginning. And we should focus on technology as a whole, because everything is interconnected. So let's embrace the concept. And I think, and we know that things are changing. Just to share that final thought, and I would like to thank the executive board, ACP, and these two great panelists that we had today, Ben and Hernán. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Pablo. Gracias.
Thank you, Pablo. Thank you, ACP, and thank you, Ben. On my behalf, I hope to see you soon.
Me, thanks, ACP.